All right, we're
Well,
recording.
let's get going.
We're on.
We're on.
What's up, everybody?
What's going on? Welcome.
It was a good week to take a 1 week snowboarding trip.
Oh yeah, man. I was completely unplugged for a week straight. It felt amazing. I mean, I would still get on Twitter from time to time, but yeah, the conditions were pretty good. I was at Jackson Hole, and I mean, we thought like because basically like they got dumped on. They had so much snow, but as soon as we got there, it got warm, and this is like the first time where I didn't have to wear my winter jacket. So I have these Gore-Tex bibs and stuff, and they keep you pretty warm. But but anyways, yeah, the snow was still really good, and so yeah, we were tearing up the slopes for a week straight. So it's time to get back to business and
That's right.
figure out what's going on in the markets.
That's why I pulled up the sushi and the pancake, man.
Yeah. You're coming back to like a slightly more optimistic market than you left, I think. Well, it was looking a little bit bleaker last week.
The day after you left, everything was like, all right, what's happening? But I think it was just a dip. But people were freaking out a little bit though.
There was like before I left though, there was so much irrational exuberance in the market. Like the laser eyes.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, just everything. There and I still see a lot of it right now. So just looking at the charts, although there's some bullish things, there's also some things that I'm still kind of like, I'm not sure I like the way this looks, but we're sort of in that decision phase where I think the market needs to figure out which direction it's going to take. And so really only time will tell.
That's true. Then again, it is March, and we know that March is, historically that slow time. So
right.
I don't know. I mean, we're getting close to, I don't know, it's the first week of March already, so we still have some time. But then you got random things pumping too.
I mean, I think you'll see the small caps and stuff like pump a little bit when they're not maybe quite as correlated to the rest of the market when there are new products coming online and stuff like that. But I kind of wouldn't mind. Well, I mean, obviously I'm all for up only, but I still think it would be healthy for us to come back and tap that 20-week EMA on the Bitcoin chart, which is it did, I don't know, like 3 or 4 times in 2018, in 2017. And right now we're sitting it's at 35,000. So, I don't really want to dip down to 35,000, but I don't know if it would necessarily be a bad thing. And I think maybe right now, best case scenario might be if we kind of range sideways for a couple weeks and let that average come up a little bit, and then maybe a quick wick down and tap it at like 42 or so, and then launch off from there. That would be kind of my ideal situation.
Yeah, I'm just looking at I'm looking at the weekly right now, and I use the 21 EMA, and I mean that's sitting at 34,366 at the moment, and we see the RSI is kind of declining slightly. So I mean, there's definitely divergence building slightly. But I'm not seeing confluence, so I'm not seeing that divergence on the Stoke, and I'm also not seeing it on the structural analysis. So like it's showing expansion still on the weekly. So I mean, I don't know if it's anything really to be concerned of. I'm not sure. Like there's no top here. At least I don't think so. But there was just so much irrational exuberance. So the market needed a healthy correction. And so what you're saying could actually be correct because, if you're retail investors, the guys that are fresh and new to the market that haven't lived through a market cycle before, they're buying the top. And then all of a sudden it crashes and they get scared and they sell. So those weak hands have to sell. And so that takes time. and maybe we see it range sideways or even slightly down a little bit and kind of base out. But overall, at least looking at the macro and the structural analysis, like it's still showing expansion. So I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see what happens.
I think personally, I was happy to see the daily close up around 51,000 and Ethereum over 1,700. I think that's those are 2 points that hopefully they're flipping into resistance or support. So I think that maybe bodes well for the coming week.
Yeah, it's just so hard to say. It's like we were saying, like I like to see confluence. I like to see confluence between multiple indicators and sometimes assets. And right now I'm seeing kind of a mixture, right? I'm seeing a mixture of some bearish signs, but also some bullish signs. So that to me just tells me the market still doesn't really, like, there's no decision that's been made. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's probably still a lot of irrational exuberance, but also a lot of bearishness forming. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, alts have been kind of moving some. Bitcoin's now moving a little bit since the weekly close, I guess, or kind of hanging around, 51.5? Ethereum.
It's just doing this weird stuff where it's around that 51 and it goes up a little bit, and but it's not holding it. And it did that a couple times in the past few days, and that's kind of where to your point, what you're saying is like the market's still trying to make a decision where to go. Yeah.
I can share my screen. I can share my screen real quick and just kind of show if we have any viewers this time what we're talking about here. Let's see, just real quick. Is that showing up for you guys?
Yep. You're up.
Oh, you know what? It's probably showing my background now. Let's see. There we go. How about that?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm just sitting here looking at the weekly on ETH. And so, like, you can see this big red candle here. We came down. This is a 10 simple, and we tested the 10 simple with a bearish engulfing candle, but it's retraced quite a bit. And so because we didn't get continuation here, that tells me that's somewhat invalidated. I mean, it's over 50% retracement, or it could be, sideways action. Whereas we go back and you could see the top of ETH where it failed to hit, 1600. And, we had this bearish engulfing candle here. And I mean, roughly 50% retracement or so, and then we got continuation. So this is going to be the week that really probably drives direction in the market, especially for Ethereum. Just to take a look at structural analysis, as you can see, at least with ETH, that we're still in expansion for the most part. So this yellow is our structural analysis momentum. And we're still seeing that expanding. So when you see it kind of grow like this, where it's expanding, you know that the trend is expanding. When it's transparent yellow, that means it's basically expanding to the downside. And when it's solid yellow, it's expanding to the upside. So macro still looks like this is expansion, although there is kind of, you see this drop here, but it's like it's unconfirmed because it's still the week. Like there's so much could happen this week, so who knows? And that's why I think that this week has a lot to tell. Let's just take a look at Bitcoin real quick. So Bitcoin on the weekly, same deal. Bearish engulfing, and then we had a retracement of that, which is somewhat of a good sign because it can invalidate, basically a bearish engulfing candle is a sign of a trend reversal, which is somewhat concerning. But if we get this retracement and we get continuation here, then this is completely invalidated. And you can see, Oh, and you've been talking a lot about this EMA. So this is a 21 EMA, and you see it sitting a little above 34,000. And these dashed lines, if I just zoom out, get rid of the EMAs, you can see we've kind of had this grind zone for years. For years that that Bitcoin has kind of just based out in. And so we broke out. You know, we had the halvening, and then we had the election, and we just broke out. So I mean, we're definitely still confirmed macro bull market. That has not changed at all. So I think the same with Bitcoin. You know, this week's really going to tell. You know, what are we going to get? Some sideways or down action, or are we going to get are we going to resume the trend? I think actually sideways action might be better. You know, give it more time to base out.
It could actually go sideways.
That's kind of my thought too.
Bounce off that line. Bounce off the EMA.
Right.
I think if you look at most of the corrections in 2017 too, nothing was like really a week. You know, I mean, you're looking at 3 to 4 weeks at each of those like 6 corrections that occurred.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know if we can even call this a proper correction until we see that. And with the way that March has been historically, it wouldn't be surprising. That's why I say I think it would be kind of be best case scenario if we just kind of range sideways for a couple of weeks. Because I think, like I said, once we touch that EMA, I think it's game on. And I would rather touch that EMA once the EMA is up by like 42 than where it's sitting at like 34, 35 right now.
Well, the other thing is like traditional markets have kind of slowed down, and I think everyone was expecting Powell to, you know, talk about how they're going to keep interest rates low and really protect equities and protect the markets, and he didn't really give that sign of strength. That, you know, the Fed, I think he left the market with some uncertainty. I mean, those speeches don't really mean anything anyway, but other than how are market participants going to gauge, you know, how is their sentiment going to change based on the Fed's response? But, you know, Fed, they're not honest with us anyway, exactly what happened, what they're going to do or what they're planning or what they're talking about. So you got to take all that stuff with a grain of salt. So, I mean, with traditional markets kind of slumped a little bit, you know, that can put a halt real fast to a bull market in crypto.
That could change pretty quickly, though. I mean, you know, the Senate just yesterday passed the stimulus bill. So as soon as the House votes on those alterations, I mean, we might see a continuation of this ridiculous cycle that we've been in since the crash last March. So maybe we see this continuing of these. You know, that's ideal for us in crypto. We want to see this bubble not pop until at least next year.
Well, you know, a percentage of that stimulus will absolutely go into.
Mine will
absolutely go into crypto.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
I'm gonna buy myself an Ethereum with it.
I mean, I was just gonna say, if it, you know, with that on the flip side of what you were saying with the markets, I mean, the stimulus, the amount of money they're printing is insane, and you forget about the politics, but that's undoubtedly going to have some impact on inflation, and we know what that does to crypto, of course. Right.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely going to have inflation in the long run. I mean, it's still questionable what's going to happen in the short term. You know, people are arguing about this every day, and I think the fact of the matter is there's been some serious supply shocks and demand shocks as well that have basically created some artificial inflation. But is that going to stay around? And then on top of that, now the Fed basically increasing their balance sheet. In the long run, I think you can't get around it. There's going to be inflation, but in the short run, we have some serious deflationary pressures also. Technology is deflationary. I mean, just think about all the dollars that flow into crypto and all of these smart contracts. What happens when these smart contracts blow up, right? When there's a hack, when something fails, and that money just evaporates. So that's deflation. And when you study technology, the technology growth, and it really inception, and when you study when technological revolutions are first growing, like at their inception point, there's massive waves of deflation during these periods. So I still think we're in those early days with crypto where, I mean, crypto alone is contributing to it. And then you have all kinds of other forces from solar technologies to energy to, autonomous vehicles. There's a lot of stuff going on from the technology front that's pushing deflation. And then you have the Fed trying to drive inflation. But there's only so many levers they can pull, Are they going to print their way to oblivion? Maybe. We'll see.
That's probably the most likely case, honestly. But
yeah, maybe we'll all be millionaires in a year, but it'll be $1,000 to buy a roll of toilet paper.
Right. Yeah, there's no doubt. People who get in now can still make $1 million in this market, with the right plays. There's so much money to be made. This is definitely a 10-year play. Ethereum, what's happening in the smart contracts space, Bitcoin, the store of value. There's just so many things compounding. And it's hard not to get caught up in the narrow-minded, short-term thinking that most investors get caught up in. That's why it's so important to really, build a community out and make sure that you surround yourself with people who are like-minded and, not emotional. Because the play here is long-term. How do we acquire more and more crypto long-term during this inception phase of this new technology that's going to continue to appreciate? And I mean, just looking at this chart again, this is log. You want to see what it looks like on actual linear terms. Whoops. Let's get rid of all that. I mean, look at this. Look at this growth. Well, let's just zoom. Let's
thing.
Go back in time a little bit. I mean, imagine when we were up here. So this is 2016 or 2017. Same deal. 2014. So, your feelings tell you you're near the top. You're wondering, oh my gosh, it's going to crash. Like, what's going to happen? But when you zoom out, I mean, really zoom out, look what happens to every single one of these peaks.
Sure. I mean, I think you're hitting on one of the most important points about investing is you just have to keep a level headed. You can't get emotional. I know personally, all of the worst moves that I've made were all driven by emotion, 100%. Whether that be FOMOing in really hard into something, or just finally like not being able to take a coin bleed out and like selling the bottom,
Yeah.
And every time it's an emotional decision. It's a decision where I knew if I'd sat and thought about it, I probably would have logically come to a different decision. But I think the lesson is to just take a step back. If you're emotional, leave it till the next day and see how you feel then.
Absolutely, that's really, really valuable advice. And that's the hardest thing. Really, the best thing that you can do is kind of unplug every now and then. So, for example, my trip last week, that's exactly what I did. And the second important thing to do would be to read, in my opinion, read books, or detach in a way where you're not reading something that's necessarily current news or narrative related, but you're reading something timeless. Like, one of the books that I like is Mastering the Market Cycle by Howard Marks, just because he spends so much time talking about these different phases of emotion and psychology. And these markets are purely human psychology, and that's what they're driven by. And that lies on top of the technological, you can call it Metcalfe's law, or exponential growth platform. The psychology builds on top of that and creates these hype cycles that build on top of the actual growth. And this is exactly what you're looking at. So in linear terms, it looks like an exponential growth curve. As soon as you put it in log, and all that does is change the scale, the y-axis, where an exponential curve becomes a straight line. So an exponential growth curve will look like a straight line, essentially, just like that. And so we see that we're seeing that. We're seeing it right now. So the question is, short term, all the stuff we're talking about is like almost negligible because we're talking so short term. Are we going to crash or are we going to go higher? I mean, in the long term, I think we know what's going to happen. I mean, where do you guys think the market's going to be in 2025? I mean,
it's going to be insane in
another
2025.
halving after the next halving. I mean, if we just stay with this growth channel alone, I mean, look where it would put it. I mean, it's $500,000. If we track the peaks, we're almost $5 million, $4.5 million. So I mean, that range somewhere it's insane. It's absolutely insane. It makes you wonder, should you even bother selling during a bear market, even if it crashes 50, 60, 80%, or you just kind of not worry about it? Sometimes timing the market ends up screwing you at the end versus just riding the adoption long term. I don't know.
Gamble for sure.
Yeah. So a couple of things here I'll point out since I have this chart. So we have this kind of grind channel that we've been the price action has on the log has really been grinding up in this channel. And after we broke out, we're up to we hit almost 60. We failed to hit $60,000. So, but one thing, I don't always trust this stuff, but I mean the fibs are nice to look at because they do occur in nature. And so what you can do with a fib is basically you can set it at 0 and then put the 1 right in the middle of the liquidity zone from the last high. And so we know that liquid zone was like 15 to 20K. I mean, you can just tell by looking at it, basically it popped right at 20,000. We had a blow off top. It came down and we had our hope recovery phase right here that made it up to 16-ish and then it failed. So we know this is, just rough estimate. We can place this right in the middle of the liquidity zone. And I can go back and do it from the past cycle. So if I do that, the past liquidity zone from 2014, you'll notice that the $20,000 peak topped out around the 17.944 fib. So just looking at that, and if we were to look at the same, where does that lie? That 17 lies kind of crazy, $290,000 ish. So it'll be, it's going to be interesting to see because I believe in reflexivity, and I think that market participants will basically attach because of emotions. They'll latch on to these narratives. And then they slowly become true. And there's just so many technical signals pointing to these kinds of prices. Then there's the other side of me, the non-emotional, more logical-minded side that says, maybe actually it's more emotional. That's like, there's no way that can happen. That's too high. It's too high of a price. Like, what if it doesn't make it? What if we actually have, longer cycles this time and we don't actually, have as high of growth? It's been happening faster this cycle than the last one, as we've talked about in previous videos. But I mean, even if we were to go to the 11, that's $180,000, and that's just Bitcoin. So much opportunity in the rest of the market. So much opportunity. Anyway,
that might be a good segue. Do you want to talk about maybe some of that opportunity, some of the projects that we're excited about?
I think we should.
Yeah.
I think we want to switch gears. I want to hear about this this NFT Gameswap that you've been talking about lately.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing to talk about right now. NFTs have obviously been blowing up recently, and it's an interesting thing. There's a lot of NFTs getting sold now that are for a lot of money. Unisocks are 6 figures now, like $150,000 each now.
That's crazy.
And in the CryptoPunks, some of them are selling them for $1 million. It's insane. I don't know necessarily how I personally feel about the art side of NFTs. I don't necessarily know if that's something I would ever really be interested in.
Right.
But the practical applications, or I don't know, technical applications of NFTs are a lot more interesting once you start talking about, like, for example, Mark Cuban was discussing ticket sales for for the Mavs, and how you could tokenize tickets and sell them as NFTs. And then every time someone resold them, like a ticket scalper, that you could program in royalties that would go back to the Mavs.
I was just going to say that.
I mean, that's amazing.
Imagine if you're an artist, right? And you want to release some sort of digital content, whether it's music or whatever. I mean, you could apply this to so many things that could have a digital signature. Like NFTs really should be thought of more like the artist's signature. That's what the NFT really is. It's like you're getting proof of and verification that, it's the real artwork. And then on top of that, you get the functionality of smart contracts. So in a sense, you can you could have royalties, just like you're saying. Imagine if you're an artist. Well, if you sell a painting and you sell that painting for $5,000, and then a year later, the person or organization that bought that painting sells it for $50,000, and then a year later it sells for $1 million, and then a couple years later it sells for $10 million, and so on. Imagine being that artist that was like, well, fuck, I only got $5,000. What the hell? This is bullshit, right? Well, with an NFT, it can be programmed in such a way where the artist gets a cut of that transaction. So in that regard, I think there's a lot of value to offer there. And I think you'll see increased adoption. Now, what you describe in terms of how you feel, I'm the exact same way. It's like you're buying like a JPEG, like seriously.
Yeah.
And like
for $1 million.
And I think that is the irrational exuberance we're seeing in the market. And that's one of the signs. It's like, shit, it's here already. We're only at 50K Bitcoin, and this crap is happening already. I mean, I think last time it was the CryptoKitties, whatever, last cycle. I mean, it might have been only a couple weeks from the top when that stuff started popping off. And so, like, I guess it's happening earlier. Maybe we're going to see more of it, or maybe there's truly more underlying adoption. But to me, it gives me a weird feeling. It's the emotion. We're talking to the emotions again, but it's just like these signs, like the laser eyes,
Yeah.
People buying JPEGs.
It's interesting. Now, let me throw something on the flip side about that. I was actually thinking about these NFTs and kind of the crypto art, and let's make it analogous to the classical real world. So think about, you've got pieces of art. Let's just say the Mona Lisa is arguably worth whatever, hundreds or millions of dollars, right? Or unique pieces of art like that. And it's always been kind of a bourgeois thing on the upper class to kind of collect pieces of art. And really, on the face of it, I mean, it's somebody, and I'm not at all trying to downplay art and beauty. I mean, it is a pretty cool thing for a painter or anybody to go and create something like that. It's very unique. But there's certain things that maybe have a name attached to it, and people among the upper class, it's kind of like a status symbol. So as we kind of migrate into this digital space, I can see this becoming kind of analogous to, these bourgeois people will get together and go to art shows and look at art and kind of bid on it. And this is kind of, could be a similar thing. I don't know.
I think you are dead on the money, man. And I think you just have to look at like big Twitter influencers like bragging about buying, NFTs for $10,000 or $100,000 or something. It's a status symbol. It's these people who love to brag about how they're crypto millionaires on Twitter, and then it's a flex for them. It's like, look what I did. But then I think there's also this cascade effect that, also possibly could be, kind of a top signal, hopefully not, but about, these are influencers, and there's a lot of people out there who are easily influenced, so once these guys start talking about, oh, I bought this, but I bought some of these for $1 million or whatever, then you start seeing, the average Joe start thinking like, oh, here comes a new NFT release. I'm going to buy a bunch of this and I'm going to be able to resell it for, 5, 6, 7 figures. Even though it's like a completely illiquid, like NFT shitcoin. But because I saw my favorite, Twitter influencer do it, I'm going to try and make some money.
Exactly. But like what you're seeing is an extension of human nature in the digital realm, right? I mean, go back to high school. What did you want? I mean, not everyone is like this, but I wanted fast cars. I still have a fast car in the background. Like I wanted status. You want girls. There's all these things. And like men have to compete for women. So like you have to have status. You have to have resources in order to acquire a mate. Like this is like basic evolutionary psychology. So it's foolish to think that that's not going to extend in the digital realm. You can see it everywhere, just like you're talking about on Twitter with influencers. I think to expand on that slightly, that there's kind of like more than one type of people and use cases for why you would purchase art. So it's not all status. I mean, surely there's a lot of status. But I think also people look at it as a store of value. And if you talk to any really talented collectors who understand how to seek value in items, Bojanglin, you actually somewhat understand this, because like when you buy AMGs, like you look for AMGs that have a very small number. Like you had the C55 and there was only 2,000 of them or something. I forget exactly, but there wasn't that many. And then the C63 and and you notice the engine covers are literally signed by the technician that assembled the motor, the AMG motor. So like Mercedes knows they're high-end vehicles. Like they know how to apply these signatures and apply these things to attract that scarce form and increase the value of the car. And I think the same goes for artwork, and to some extent, where you only have a fixed number of prints, like 1 of 200, sometimes 1 of 1. And then on top of that, you talk to collectors or anybody who's buying something used. For old school people who used to watch Seinfeld, there's an episode of Seinfeld, and I forget the actor's name, but George in Seinfeld, he literally goes and buys a car because an actor used to own it. The salesperson told him the such and such actor used to own this vehicle, so he bought it. And the next day he's like driving this piece of shit car around. That's just like it's complete shit car. And like he's telling everyone, I got so-and-so's car. Like he's all big and status, right? So like there's that status side of things of like basically having the story associated with it. So certain painting, maybe the artist has a unique story about how he painted it or where he painted it, or, it could be that car has a unique story attached to it. All these things are going to exist in the digital space as well. So it's a very, very, you're treading in thin water in terms of where the actual value is. There's no doubt there's real value. Like the cypherpunk or whatever.
Right.
I mean, they're one of the early, I think there's a story attached to that. Like if you read about them, like it's the standard. I don't know if it's the standard of that NFT or something. Like it's one of the first or one of the earliest. I don't actually know, but I know that there's a story attached to it. And that's part of the reason that the value is been driven up so high.
Interesting.
Have you seen the newest trend the last couple of days is the tokenizing of tweets? Yeah. People buying tweets for hundreds and thousands of dollars.
That is just absolutely. I'm sorry, but that's just dumb as hell. Like they don't even have the property rights. Like okay, so it's a screenshot. So JPEG. I guess the JPEG will still exist. Where's it going to be? Like, where is it going to live? It's going to live on a centralized server somewhere. Like when Twitter decides to delete that account or that tweet, where does it go? There's no ownership there. There's no property rights whatsoever.
I'm pretty sure I saw someone share one that was deleted, and it's just like a 404 not found.
What did Jack Dorsey? It's sold, didn't it? Jack Dorsey.
I think someone bid $2.5 million on that.
It's insane.
Yeah. See, that's the crazy side of it too. Yeah. But you're 100%. I mean, I do think that at least in the long term, like you were saying, it's going to be a migration into the digital space of all of these things.
Right.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to projects. Odin, you've been blowing up the group chat with one project in particular, and I haven't looked into it. Haven't done any due diligence whatsoever. So let's hear it. What's so great about it?
It's the Shroom ecosystem, and particularly the upcoming DEX that should be launched by the end of the month. That's called Gameswap, and this is something that I find to be a very interesting use case for NFTs, as they are essentially creating an infrastructure for creating and selling and trading NFTs for in-game video game assets. And so it's a 2-token system. The Shrooms are both share revenue from the decentralized exchange, and Shroom is required for minting the NFTs, and GSWAP, the other token, will be used as currency on the decentralized exchange, which should be launching on Avalanche within the next days to weeks. So
why will this exchange get adoption? And how? So
in-game video game sales is $100 billion a year industry. This is already a thriving industry. No
one's going to argue that.
People pay, the way that I look at it is, people will pay $20 for a pack of 5 skins on Fortnite.
Status.
I think that, yeah, exactly. I think that to be able to then trade those skins after you buy them is going to be something that's interesting. And then I would also say, like, consider someone being willing to spend $20 for a skin that anyone in the world can buy. There are absolutely going to be people who are willing to spend a lot more money on skins that are skins or items or whatever that are 100% unique that no one else can have.
So hold on.
I think that
let me ask a question here, because what you're describing makes complete sense, and it just builds on top of everything we basically just said. My question is, why will it get adoption? I mean, why wouldn't a game, like, if you're a giant game label, like, why wouldn't you just build in your own exchange? You think Microsoft, like, they already have their exchanges. I mean, why wouldn't they just adopt the token standard? And in fact, do you even need an exchange to send an NFT? I mean, if I want to send my friend an NFT, I can just send it to him on Ethereum and hope that he pays me the money. I guess the exchange would help facilitate that transaction, especially among parties who where they don't have to trust each other. But why wouldn't the game producer? Why wouldn't they have their own exchanges? Why would they rely on this? I just feel like I've heard some of these narratives in the past. Like, what makes this one special?
I don't know if you'll ever see Microsoft or PlayStation necessarily adopt it. I think it would be something more in the lines of, like, independent game designers. And I think also that a big portion of that $100 billion industry isn't big AAA game designers from Microsoft and PlayStation, and Sony or whatever. A lot of that is, like, in-game purchases through like mobile games. And so, I mean, these mobile games, millions of people are playing them, even though they're dumb as hell, but they're free and you download them and people spend money on them. And that's the kind of thing that could be tokenized. I know also so for instance, I would also answer that with, I think it was one of the founders of Aave was asked, why do you use Chainlink? Why don't you just build your own Oracle? And his response was, this allows us to be experts in lending and borrowing and not have to be experts in, writing an Oracle. It's something that's extremely important, that is a whole nother area that adds like a whole nother area of expertise, and having a standardized version of it like facilitates it and allows us to focus on what we're doing. So I would imagine that would be something that would drive the adoption here, especially for like independent game designers. There's also some other things I think that are just ease of use. Are you familiar with Unreal Engine?
Yeah.
Or Unity, the video game engines that are used to design and create video games.
Sure.
Unreal is used to create, like, honestly, like the majority of video games out nowadays. It's
the physics engine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Gameswap is launching with Unreal and Unity integration. So that's for them to be able to draw in, game designers who are not familiar with blockchain. They can just interface with Unreal and create these NFTs. I think that there's a lot of possibility here. I think that.
What about the founders? So you mentioned that they were anonymous.
Yeah.
So why is the team anonymous? I mean, I understand there has been some success with anonymous teams for certain things, but like Chainlink is not anonymous, if I recall. So, I mean, for a big project that's truly going to drive success and adoption, like there needs to be figureheads that are out there, like driving the success of the business, driving the success of operations, like building those partnerships, like connecting, games and building the marketplace. So, I mean, is there an active voice? What's the marketing like? I mean, it's a small project right now. So what kind of narratives are building that's going to really drive and pump this thing up? Because I mean, I agree that it sounds good. You just have to really watch some of these small projects at their infancy, because there's a lot of risk in these small market cap projects that don't have a name to themselves yet.
Sure. I would also say I think that I could probably name 20 to 50, 100, 500 million market cap projects that are anonymous teams, maybe even the majority of them nowadays. So I know that's something that's important to you. I
don't know about that.
I wouldn't. Yeah.
What projects?
I mean, you put me on the spot here. I'm not.
I'm just saying, like, pretend this is not crypto. Pretend you're a VC and you're operating in traditional finance and you're going to do your due diligence, right? You're looking at deploying funds, investing in a wide variety of assets, and trying to ride that J hook and that exponential growth. So you get that dip, you're looking at 5, 10, 15 years out, before you can really realize those gains. And of course, crypto markets are moving much quicker, and you can somewhat do that within each cycle, which is only a few years, a couple years each, and you can play that same kind of style of deploying a portfolio. But like, you would still want to look for specific types of people who are leading these businesses. So if you study Y Combinator, who have moved thousands and thousands of successful entrepreneurs through their organization, like they have really identified a certain type of, usually it's young individuals like in their 20s and stuff, where they might not have that track record of success, but they've identified, a higher probability of having a chance of having that success. And then as far as those older, they're looking for track records. So you're looking for a team, people who have either worked together in the past and shown success, or really guys who have run previous businesses and have completed what they said they were going to perform. So again, I'm kind of talking out of my ass here because I haven't reviewed this project. So I'm kind of just giving you a hard time trying to figure out, where the weakness is. And I mean, no doubt can you say like that's absolutely a weakness when founders of a project are anonymous. It doesn't mean that they can't achieve success. It just means you're doing your due diligence. You're trying to check boxes where, the founding team, have they had prior successes? Do they do what they say they're going to do? And then you have a higher risk or a lower risk of rug pulls, a lower risk of the project collapsing and going to zero. So I think that what you describe as far as the marketplace has a lot of merit. I would want to know more about what their plan is for deploying and building that adoption.
I see your points. That's not something that's as important to me. I think the biggest winners I've had have been anonymous. It's been anonymous teams. And I can understand why like large accredited VCs wouldn't want to invest in anonymous teams, even though I think that does happen some. But you don't have to look any further than like SushiSwap, which is a completely anonymous team and like, one of the biggest decentralized, very possibly going to become the biggest decentralized exchange when it's deploying on like every single blockchain.
Well, what do we know?
I mean,
what do we know about the roadmap?
So, I mean, they've been very focused on getting the DEX out. It was supposed to come out in January, and then that was around the time when Ethereum gas prices were spiking like crazy, and they made the decision before deploying it to not deploy on Ethereum and to port it to Avalanche instead, which apparently is not a super complicated process. The Avalanche team apparently makes it really easy, and now it's going through, they're basically just polishing up that project and making sure there's no, bugs in it. Which I personally think I see as another like big win for the DEX is not being on Ethereum, because this is not aimed at crypto users. And I think that's one interesting thing about this project isn't aimed at the market. This project is aiming for a completely untapped market. I think that's one thing that's pretty interesting. And gamers aren't going to want to have to, buy Ethereum, and no one's going to want to spend $100 transaction fee to buy some skins or whatever, So I think that's a really smart move. And then they're going to, the roadmap that they've discussed so far basically is after release, they're going to continue to integrate different video game engines to keep onboarding new, make it easier to onboard new developers who are familiar with different, engines. And they're going to continue to partner with, new developing new developers and companies.
So what are they doing?
They've said before that the DEX is completely done, and that they are. They said this before they put it on the Avalanche. They said that at this point that we're just like finding more partners to come online with at the beginning. So
are they building out the code set that basically game devs are going to be able to grab and integrate, so that essentially the exchange will be on the back end? And is this going to be in game, or people are going to have to take their NFTs to this exchange, which will live on the web somewhere? Like,
I don't really play video games on the PC, so I don't really know how that necessarily works. There already are in-game assets and stuff that are NFTs. Yeah. This is not a novel idea, so I don't know anything about the. Yeah, I don't know anything about that necessarily. I do know that the integration of like the Unreal engines is for game designers to create like items, in-game video game items, like create like a unique gun for a game in a shooter or something like that, and tokenize it.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. I'm going to read up on this and do some more due diligence. I would urge caution.
Well,
to some extent, because like, you know, Stellar is a perfect example. Like the narrative for Stellar was like cross-border payments, you know, going to overtake Fedwire, blah, 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 announcing partnerships with IBM. I mean, there were just all these things, and like, look at it, like what's happened. I mean, it's common during this stage of the hype cycle. I've been through these cycles before, and it's common where the irrational exuberance is very prevalent, that these projects pop up that promise these partnerships with high profile partners, and they don't live up to it. Nothing happens. So I see this as very much the opposite of that.
The team is making very, very little claims. The team like has been creating the project. They've turned down like a lot of investment opportunities and had a completely fair farming opportunity for the release of both of their tokens. And it's not like it's like a giant corporation that like gave a bunch of polish and announced a bunch of partners. It's some developers that I think are creating like a novel concept. So I mean, we'll see what happens. It's already I mean, I'm already up 6 or 7x on both of them. So I'm massively in the green as it is.
So I just went to their website, and I guess it's obviously early, but like their website, the first thing is buy GSWAP, farm GSWAP. That's it. And then you scroll down and another buy GSWAP. Like, it's not saying anything about the DEX or roadmap.
I think you might be on their old website.
GSWAP.org.
Gameswap.org.
Or sorry, Gameswap.org.
Yeah, I went to the same thing. I was just checking it out.
What is GameSwap has a one sentence. GameSwap is a community-driven, decentralized exchange for in-game assets and NFTs. I mean, I guess maybe if they're actually developing, then they're not focusing on their front end, which
and that's exactly what's happening.
Could be a good thing.
I would recommend for like small community projects, you should go to the Medium and actually read what they're saying about the project. Right. Read the white paper and not look at the front page of a website.
That's definitely one to put on the list to research further.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Sorry, I'm just reading through here. Yeah, so where would you recommend? So you say Medium, or do they have a Telegram? Oh, I see. Here's a Discord.
Yeah, there's a Medium. I went to
there's a Telegram and a Discord.
Yeah, if you click the About, it takes you to the Medium about them.
Here we go. All right.
It's it's been a project that's I've been telling you about this for months. It's just been an interesting ride for me so far. I may be more bullish on it because it's already done 6 or 7x each for me. So and it's still GSWAP is still under 20 million and Shroom is like 35 million or something now. So there's another platform out there with significantly less functionality than what Shroom is promising. That is called Engine now, and it's about 1.2 billion. And
so there is competition.
That shows you it is it's
I'm familiar with Engine. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know that coin. That doesn't that live in the Polkadot the Polkadot ecosystem? That project?
No, I think it's on Ethereum.
Well, the coin, of course, would be an ERC20, but I thought that had something to do with Polkadot. Maybe I'm wrong. Engine,
I don't believe so.
ENJIN, right?
Yeah. So I mean, it's a $1.4 billion coin right now. So if a small indie competitor of this can capture 20% of that market, then Shroom and GSWAP are still going to 10x from here. So I think that they're a pretty solid bet for this run. And as I was saying, I think that they are what's interesting to me about it is that this is going to be the revenue streams for Shroom and GSWAP, which, by the way, Engine doesn't provide revenue streams. I mean, you can't stake Engine and get a portion
Engine
of their fees.
Engine has a public team.
Cool. I mean, cool. And I think that the revenue stream that would be created is not. I think it's bear market proof. The revenue streams aren't built on the market cycles of cryptocurrency. Gamers don't care that we're in a bear market. Gamers are just going to buy what they want. So I think that that's interesting as well.
As far as what the liquidity mining, as far as the fees, the revenue fees,
like revenue sharing from the platform, protocol fees that are going to go towards the holders of the tokens, that revenue stream is going to be unaffected by a bear market because the by and large, the market that they're going after are not traders. People buy video games no matter. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of a dip in like recessions and video games purchases, but by and large, people are going to buy video games.
Yeah, I mean, down the road, as this whole ecosystem scales, that's probably certainly the case. Maybe not short term, maybe this cycle or next cycle, maybe not. But as it grows, I mean, gamers are spending their money on video games, not crypto, or skin. Maybe they're buying skins and guns or something.
Who knows?
Interesting. Is there another website? Is there information on the tokenomics anywhere?
Probably on Medium. I think that Shroom is almost entirely in circulation. And there were no pre-sales, no like VCs or anything. So it's like completely in circulation. And GSWAP is, I think there's like 8 million out of 21 million tokens released. And they have like another liquidity mining event planned for when they launch the DEX. So that will.
So CoinGecko says 65 million shroom, a Master Chef, whatever that is, 2.3 million. The team 6.8 million. I mean, that's not terrible actually. The ratio, I don't mind that too much. Like I like to see at least well over 50%, in public control versus founders and team. But so then GSWAP is so Shroom is the currency, and
Shroom is what's used to mint the NFTs, and GSWAP will be the currency.
So GSWAP, according to CoinGecko, there's 20 million GSWAP. It doesn't say what this address is, but 2.7 million of it is in this 0x8BE9. And then the team has nearly 9 million. So between those two, that's over 50% of the supply.
I don't really know what that address is.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't say. It's pretty cool. I think that must be a recent update from CoinGecko because I don't recall seeing.
Well, that's just
like if you hold the mouse over the little question mark, it's pretty cool. Like shows addresses now. You can actually click on them and it opens up Etherscan.
I have no idea what that address is. We don't really need to scroll through Etherscan on stream, though.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah. Well, what else do you guys want to talk about? I mean,
any
NFTs,
tokens you guys are interested in?
I think that's maybe about it for tonight. This will be an interesting week, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've been unplugged for the last week. I'm obviously still interested in Celsius, Hex. I like Litecoin. Loopring, definitely. And Loopring is still, I was accumulating Loopring pretty heavily back in the summer just because I was watching and listening to what Vitalik was talking about and trying to research Ethereum scaling. And that's another topic we could touch on is the EIP 1559 has been supposedly there's consensus now that's going to be released with that'll be
July.
Supposedly July with the London fork for Ethereum. So that's a big deal. And that's where the base fee for gas gets burnt. That's freaking awesome. Just put it that way. It's that means Ethereum. It's now possible for Ethereum. It's possible for Ethereum to become deflationary during very, very high consumption, high transaction times, where the network has extreme demand with high transaction throughput. That can, in theory, drive the supply deflationary. Which, man, does that really help boost price? Because right now, I mean, with all the transactions, I mean, there's all the demand on Ethereum and the high gas fees and stuff, alleviating some of that is just, man. So then add in layer 2 scaling, which I think there's a couple things happening. So you have, man, I don't understand the whole technical side of it because I haven't dove in deep enough, but there's a couple things, like there's optimistic rollups, which I think is like it's less optimal between the solutions, but it's the easiest to implement. And that's basically where like you have all of these, like, I don't know, it's like shards or whatever, and you basically bundle the transactions into the different shards or something like that. And then these transactions get like bundled and rolled up together, and it happens very quick. It's like near instant and like no fees, really. And then the other is it ZK Snarks or something like that? And that's like the privacy one. Yeah, I think that's like the better solution, but it's like super hard from a technical perspective to like implement. So, and there's a lot of really cool things happening. So another project to watch very closely is like SNX, because like they are like Synthetics, they are like their devs and stuff are like really on top of scaling, and they're like kind of leading the forefront in terms of derivatives and like bringing like synthetic assets to the crypto space. So like think equities and things like silver and gold, like they can basically create these like synthetic assets, and so like they really need scaling. So their devs are like, those guys in Synthetics are really paying attention. So I think Synthetics is worth listening and watching to try to like gain some insight into what may come in the future. And then also Vitalik, like just listening to what Vitalik is talking and writing about. And last summer, Vitalik was talking about loopring. Like he brought it up multiple times as like a possible like scaling solution. Like I started looking into it and I was like, whoa, like I can see like they're already basically doing it. And so I see loopring having a strong narrative moving forward. And I still think, I haven't looked at the chart recently because I'm already way up on loopring, but I still think that like it's probably significantly undervalued. So that's a project to watch. Synthetics is another that I think has like a potentially like a big, I think that's like going to be maybe a pretty valuable project in the future. Unfortunately, I did not accumulate back during the bear market. And man, yeah, so I've been looking at it now and it's just been pumping, and I wish I was paying attention to the markets last week, but I was snowboarding. So, I wasn't, I was unplugged.
I think Synthetics still has a lot of potential to go. I mean, I accumulated some in the last dip when it was down 15, 16, and now it's just kind of been fluctuating at that $21 to $22 mark.
Yeah.
Kind of going sideways. But I mean, I think long term it's going to go.
Yeah. And then talking about DEXs. So like we mentioned that SushiSwap, has been like eating some of Uniswap's like launch. Like you could see that the growth rate, or as far as like transactions, or I guess the market share, like if you look at what the heck's that website, Dune Analytics or whatever, like you can see the Sushi has been growing against Uniswap in terms of market share. And but I know that Hayden Adams and like their team they're definitely working on like their V3 and how they're going to scale. So I'm not sure what's going to come. And again, that's why I think watching Synthetics is a good idea. But when V3 drops for Uniswap, like, and I'm also like, we've noticed that like Uniswap, like during this little dip here, it's been staying very strong. It's been, so the market's also showing us, it's telling us that like the price, the strength, like something's brewing. I just get this feeling like something's brewing with Uniswap. And even though SushiSwap seems to be like building out these network effects that could pay off long term, because you're seeing all these like forms of liquidity pool mining. They're just doing a lot of things with Sushi that's unique. And yes, anonymous team. Uniswap is still like the main player, and there's Hayden and his team, like they have mentors like backing these guys, like helping. Like I just, that kid is smart. He is very smart, and just with what happened with Uniswap, like he raised, I forget how much money, they raised a bunch of money, and he was telling people, yeah, we build out this NFT, Unisocks or whatever product. And I think a lot of people thought he was crazy, and like, look at it now. So I even though Sushi's kind of eating its lunch for a while, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens when V3 hits and the scaling. Like Uniswap might just eat everything. I
think they're both gonna go up.
Yeah.
I think it's possible. I mean, Uniswap's been performing well. And then, I mean, Sushi, the announcement they had, was it a few days ago where they're going to go cross chain? Was kind of going to see what impact that has on it.
I find that interesting. Revenue from like 6 or 7 different chains, all coming back to Ethereum X Sushi holders. And, you know, I can see Sushi, you know, if it's deploying on Binance and Avalanche and XDAI and all of these, I mean, it's going to be the go-to on every single one of those chains, no doubt. It's already going to be the household name, you know. I guess we'll see what happens when Uni V3 comes out. I think there's rumblings that it might be coming out, you know, in the coming weeks here. So We'll see. I think that it needs revenue sharing. I think that's pretty important. I kind of don't see the point of holding a Uni token if it doesn't have revenue sharing. And, you know, I think it needs more functionality than just a DEX. But I also think, you know, it's interesting that I think that eventually, you know, the DEX aggregators are going to be where people end up going to trade, you know. So if these exchanges, you know, at some point, like, why wouldn't you just go to 1inch or something if it's going to reference every single exchange on the chain and find you the cheapest trade, you know? I feel like that just makes more sense to me moving forward, as being like the dominant form of exchange. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to like hold more value or liquidity or everything if it's just referencing liquidity from everywhere. So I don't know what that necessarily says about the future of these, you know, pre-existing non-aggregated exchanges.
Yeah. And the other thing to remember is like, it's so early still. Something could pop up and, you know, it could just take over the market. It could happen a lot quicker than we think. So that's why it's important to just stay grinding. Like we, you know, take a week off here and there, but I mean, you got to stay, you got to stay in this. You got to pay attention to your research, and you can't look away from the markets for too long because it's just, the technology is moving and changing too fast. You know, we're right at the forefront, you know, right at the forefront of this. And it's not been many times in history where you don't have to have a lot of money to participate. You know, our parents' age, you know, they're going back the last 50, 100 years. I mean, I don't know, as long as basically banks and politicians and regulators have been in control, there's been, you know, there's been regulations and things in place to prevent the little guy from partaking in this, in these types of, you know, the technology is basically gobbled up by the wealthy. And so this is the chance for the little guy basically to get in and front run the wealthy people. It's incredible. So.
Yeah. All right. On that note, I think we'll wrap it up for tonight.
You're falling asleep, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. It's getting late. I'm just watching the charts.
Yeah.
Whew.
All right. Well, I guess, yeah, we'll call it a night and we'll be back at it hopefully, I don't know, in a day or two. All right, guys.
Alrighty.
Ready?